Okay, good morning again, everyone. This is Nick Petro at the National Weather Service in Raleigh with the Tuesday update to the weekly impact weather briefing for Central North Carolina. This briefing covers the rest of this week, basically right through Sunday, and we'll take a peek into early next week as it relates to Irma and possible impacts on Central North Carolina. So, anyway, here's the overall pattern, and you can see the one thing we're going to be dealing with today and tomorrow for that matter, is a round of thunderstorms. There could be a couple rounds of thunderstorms as that cold front is approaching our area. The good news, though, is once that front moves through, basically later tomorrow, that should set us up for a really nice weather for the late week period. So I'm looking at the image in the lower left, which shows the pattern for as we head into the early part of the weekend, and with the high pressure, and it'll be cooler and drier. Just a spectacular Friday, Saturday, and even most of Sunday. So enjoy this weekend's weather. It's just going to be outstanding. And then of course later in the weekend we'll be looking at watching Irma. Things should be getting into obviously better model agreement and higher confidence in what the ultimate track of Irma is going to be. So that's the overall pattern. The concern in the near term, though, even obviously before Irma's of course a big concern, but even more so before that is the risk for a few severe thunderstorms over the next couple of days as that cold front I just mentioned moves through. Here's a closer look at that day 1 and day 2 severe weather outlook from the Storm Prediction Center, and basically the hazards will be isolated. And I've underlined the word isolated because it's not going to be like last Friday where we had a ton of warnings out and there was numerous reports of wind damage and large hail. Any impacts, any hazards will be more isolated and fewer in number than compared to this past Friday. So that's why I've underlined the word isolated severe thunderstorms. For today, the severe thunderstorm risk will be mainly north of the Highway 64 corridor. And the severe thunderstorm risk tomorrow on Wednesday will be mainly east of Highway 1. So, east of, say, the Raleigh area, the Triangle area. In terms of the hazards, so if you do get one of these isolated severe thunderstorms, it's the most likely hazard will be damaging wind gusts. And also, probably a little bit more common will be heavy downpours, and that could lead to localized flooding. I don't expect any flash flooding or localized flooding to be widespread. Again, it's just a few spotty areas that happen to see repetitive or prolonged thunderstorm heavy downpours. So that's the way it's shaping. I'll show this real quickly because this can kind of give you a sense of maybe where and when. This is a simulated reflectivity forecast from the high resolution or the high-res rapid refresh model, I should say. And this is a very sophisticated model. Sometimes it overdoes it, sometimes it gets it spot on. But nevertheless, you can see the timestamp in the top. And just to kind of give a sense, now this particular model is suggesting that early this afternoon there could be a few scattered showers. Again, don't necessarily focus on intensity so much as timing and location for where it could get wet. So basically from the Triangle region I-95 corridor eastward, there might be a few spotty showers, maybe an isolated thunderstorm mid-afternoon, and then that pushes east. But the better chance for any severe thunderstorm activity, I think, will come with this line later in the day, more like the evening hours. And you can see at this time I've stopped the advancing of the slides here at 7 p.m. this evening. There's looks like there'll be a cluster of showers with some embedded thunderstorms moving east of the Highway 77 corridor toward the Triad and toward Albemarle and Wadesboro. That'll be around the early evening hours, and you can see as that progresses eastward through the mid and late evening hours. That's the way this one particular reflectivity simulation is shaping up. And then really, as it oftentimes does in the middle of the night, dying off with loss of heating. So that's timing wise an area I did mention north of Highway 64 looks like the best severe weather threat, and it looks like that sort of early to mid evening time frame with this batch right here moving through. So anyway, that is in terms of the when. Timing-wise for that severe thunderstorm potential. All right. So what about rainfalls? We look through the entire week. I think most places will see about a ½ inch of rain as we get through the thunderstorms later today and tomorrow. When you add it up come Wednesday night and you say, okay, how much rain did I get in the last day and a half or day or 2 days? Most places are going to see about a ½ inch. For the places that see a little bit heavier thunderstorm activity, maybe a repetitive downpour, maybe up to an inch and a half of rain. So that's the way it's shaping up in terms of the amounts. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, even in the first part of Sunday should be dry, and then it's all Irma after that. So speaking of Irma, Irma's now a Category 5 hurricane. So that's the image on the left is the latest forecast track. Actually, there should be an 11 o'clock any minute now updating on the web. But essentially, this is the track here, major hurricane status as it moves towards the Florida Straits over the next 5 days. On the right, you can see some of the the various models. This is what we're looking at on the right is an ensemble of various runs of the GFS model. So you can see that quite a bit of variability still. The key points here is Irma remains a major hurricane in the eastern Atlantic. Large forecast uncertainty still exists, as demonstrated by the ensemble models. No weather impacts are expected from Irma across central North Carolina, at least for the next 5 to 6 days. Let's not overlook that. We're still a week away. So, clearly a week away, a lot can change. So let's not overlook that. We're still talking about something here that's nearly a week away. So that said, it's still too early to determine what direct impacts Irma will have on central North Carolina. But regardless, we should all be preparing for the hurricane season. We're now in the peak of the season, so everybody should be updating their hurricane plan, taking a look at that and building their family, their business, their school hurricane plans, not just for Irma, but for the whole hurricane season. So, and make sure when you're going across the internet or looking for weather data, make sure you're getting your weather information from credible sources. There's a lot of stuff out there, so be careful and be cognizant of what may be credible, what may not be credible, but continue to monitor official and credible sources for information. Just to put a little more perspective on there's so many different track models. You can see the spaghetti models there on the right of the ensembles, and obviously, there could be much different impacts to central North Carolina, depending on whether it's a far western or far eastern track or something even in the middle. So I thought it would be helpful to take a look at climatology and what we would normally expect depending on the track. And the image in the upper left is courtesy of the State Climate Office of North Carolina. You can pull this up on their webpage. I have a link there. And the red track, the dark red, that's what we call a Gulf track. And typically that leads, if a storm approaches North Carolina from that sort of general direction, the biggest impact typically is flooding in the mountains. The inland track, the orange track, that's kind of more of a Fran type track. That usually causes nearly statewide damage, not only from flooding, but also from high winds. And then the yellow track is what we call the coastal track, and that recurvature track. And typically with the recurvature track, the largest threats are typically high winds and coastal flooding from storm surge. Also, that coastal track, depending on whether there's a trough in place to the west, there can also be inland flooding as well. So I wanted to add that as well. So the yellow track can also bring inland flooding depending on the overall weather pattern. And lastly, there's typically an elevated tornado threat on the right side of these tracks. So focusing again back on the lower right, regardless of which of these solutions, end up verifying, will ultimately determine the impacts across the state. So anyway, again, summarizing it, once again, large forecast uncertainties exist. All the possible hazards and impacts remain on the table, so to speak, for central North Carolina until we get a better handle on the forecast track. And remember, Irma's still at least 6 or more days away from affecting North Carolina. The focus at this time should be about preparedness, not just for potential Irma hazards, but for the entire hurricane season. I think it's important to point that out. So what about the rest of the tropics? Looking further back to the west, there's an area of disturbed weather that has a pretty decent chance of becoming, a tropical cyclone in some fashion. And there's the the hatched area shows where that could happen. So obviously, we're nearing the peak of the hurricane season. So again, it should be no surprise that there's so many areas of interest out there as we head through early September. So anyway, let's wrap up this weekly briefing here. Isolated severe thunderstorms are possible later today, mainly north of the Highway 64 corridor. That is the severe way. I think there's a chance for rain, across all of central North Carolina, but the severe threat should be mainly confined north of Highway 64. And again, the severe threat Wednesday afternoon should be mainly east of US 1 or east of the Triangle region. The main hazards, as I pointed out earlier, are isolated damaging wind gusts. Heavy downpours could also lead to localized flooding. And then we dry out, turn comfortably cooler for the latter portion of the week and into the weekend. Obviously, we're closely monitoring Irma in the tropics. It's still too early to determine what direct impacts Irma will have on central North Carolina. But again, the message now should be about preparedness. So again, that's the key messaging right now. We're 6 days away or so preparedness is the key. And then what about additional briefings, you might be wondering? I think as the situation unfolds, we will probably begin, maybe as early as tomorrow, but we'll see. We'll probably begin daily webinars, all partner webinars to address impacts and concerns from Irma as we get a little closer. Any news or details or links or how to join those webinars, again, that'll all be shared by email. So keep track of that. Keep track of your email. Look for announcements and additional briefings from us as we head through the week and as we move closer to potential impacts or effects of Irma. So anyway, that's the weekly briefing.